Hello everyone, my name's Fyer-Huné, this is Far for Films, and I have again the lovely Ben Cole here to tell us about his acting life. So, take it away, Ben.
So my acting life started as a child when I was bored, and I used to do theatre shows around the streets with my, when I was about 12, 11, 9 or 10. And when I left boarding school and I went to a grammar school, the only thing I was good at was theatre and art and computer studies for some weird reason. And we had a really good drama department at school. So I got leading roles in that because my elder brother was also good at theatre. So when I left school with 2 O-levels, because I was kind of dyslexic and no one could read my writing, I spent a few years hanging around a performance arts college in North London, where I learned mime and we did lots of performance. And after a couple of years of that, or a year of that, I applied to drama school. And I applied to the Drama Centre, which is known for its method acting. Very difficult school, 30 students begin the first year. By the end of the second year, there are 8 left. So it's very much the competitive nature of the business. And on leaving the Drama Centre, I worked on Oh, What a Lovely War with Dudley Sutton and Murray Melvin, who were Murray was in the original production. And I think Murray fancied me. I was tall and skinny and, gentle. And I think I played all the roles that he played. And he got me a job in a little theatre in Chipping Norton in Oxfordshire for my equity card, because in those days, I don't know whether it's true now, but you had to do a certain amount of weeks in order to get your equity card, and each theatre company had to apply for an equity card, and they could have 2 a year, I think. So we went on the road with a written play by Dudley Sutton called Quackity Quack, which was a Molière, based on a Molière play. And I had to drive the van with the set on the top of the van. I had to unload the set. This is like every couple of days. I then had to put out all the costumes, do all the lighting, help the lighting guy with all the cues. Then I had to set out all the costumes and get the dressing rooms ready, run the show, plus play a leading character in it. Then after the show was over, I would pack up all the costumes, pack up the set, put it onto the van, and drive the van another 100 miles halfway, where we would stay the night for the next performance. And I was 6'2" and about 6.5 stone. So I was like a punk. And consequently, I knew so little about looking after myself, and I just spent 3 years at drama school with very small grant. So I was starving and I got sick. And one night we were performing at Eton School. We were performing 2 nights there, and it wasn't Eton School, it was a girls' boarding school. So we were performing to 500 public school girls, and because they heard Molière and they thought it would be classical. And I went on stage with a high temperature and tonsillitis, and I didn't care. And I got a standing ovation, and I got girls round the back of the van wanting my autograph. And of course, I was lying in the back of the van, completely sick. And the guy driving, because I was too ill to drive. I'm getting into too much detail here, but basically I got my equity card and I went around every theatre company in England. There were, at that time, 153 repertory companies in England. And each time I got a job, we would be invited into the stalls on opening night and told that this was the last play that they were going to do because the Arts Council had cut the grants. And then so I would get another job at another repertory company. And repertory companies, they used to put 4 shows on every 3 months. So you'd be rehearsing one while you're performing the other. And so I kind of assumed that I would be part of the company. So after about 4 years of that, and being told that theatres were closing down everywhere, I decided that I wanted a career in TV and film because theatre was just going down the pan. And I hired a video camera, an old-fashioned video camera, and I filmed my own TV show reel. So I did my classical speech and a couple of modern speeches, and I literally set the camera up, set it rolling, walked around the side and performed for the camera and did my own show reel. But every casting director that I used to meet for TV would say, well, what have you been doing? And I'd say, well, I've been playing the lead at York Theatre Royal or something like that. And they'd say, oh dear, you'll be a bit theatrical then. And I said, well, have a look at my show reel. And as the years went on, I got a part opposite Gary Oldman playing a Mohican punk. He was a middle-class English guy. I got all sorts of Sloanes, because what I decided was that, well, whenever I visited a casting director, they would say, who are you, Ben? You seem so versatile. You're playing a skinhead here and a punk here and then a posh public school guy there, then a priest there. I mean, I've looked at your show reel and I don't even recognize you. And I would like say, thank you very much. And they go, no, you don't understand. We need to find who Ben Cole really is. And I said, well, you tell me what you need in your show and I will be that. I'm versatile. I can play anything you like. I was really good at fucking accents, you know. I could, you know, I was from Essex, you know, and I could even, you know, I could do any fucking accent you like, right up to, you know, what is Scotland, you know. So I was really good at accents, and I could physicalize different kind of characters, but that wasn't useful. And friends of mine like Colin Firth, Richard E. Grant, Ray Fiennes, Gary Oldman, they were all my mates. They were who they really were. They were who they just played themselves in every role, and they seemed to make it. And I would study an animal for each role. I would change my physicality. I would adapt my voice to what I thought would go well for the role. So that didn't work in my favor. And so that was very useful on stage, but not useful in TV and film. I got my first role in a movie called Howling 5, The Rebirth. No, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was my first movie with Anthony Perkins. Now, Anthony Perkins was in Psycho. He was the lead. And I met him. In fact, I went for the audition, and it was just one of those days where I met the director. Little did I know he was an ex-porn director. And my agent took me to meet the casting director. But the casting director, I mean, you think girls have a problem in the film industry in casting. And this is called the casting couch. But my agent took me to meet the casting director because I was going up for a pimp role in Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, because he murders prostitutes. And in order to get the script off the casting director, we had to go round to her house one evening. And her daughter was rolling joints for her. And her daughter was 13 years old. And when we got there, she turned around to me and she said, in this film, you'll be playing a pimp, Ben. So I want to check whether you can play a pimp. So you're going to have to snog me. So I was faced with a real problem that here I was to play a pimp, and this was my audition for the casting director. And she was like 60 years old, and I was only, 25. And so I grabbed a glass of whiskey, I poured it into my mouth, and I kissed her and poured the whiskey down her throat. She thought this was amazing. And as I was pouring the whiskey from my mouth into hers, she held up the script. I grabbed it and we walked out. But then when I read the script, I saw that there were some very dodgy scenes in there that were verging on pornography. And so I met the director after I'd done the audition. And I said to him, look, is this a porn film or is this a drama that's going to go on in cinemas? And he said to me, oh, yes. It's okay. We will cut all the sexy scenes, whatever you want. You are the actor and you decide. So I went on set and they were filming the first scenes, and I met Anthony Perkins and I got on really well. And he said that Gregory Peck had looked after him on his first movie and that he was going to look after me, and he really looked after me. We had a fantastic time. We had 13 night shoots and we hung out together. We were singing Al Bowley crooning songs together. And he's well known bisexual man, and he just looked after me. He protected me. This is Budapest in 1983. This was a time when the Russians were in control. I had a lovely time on that movie, and I thought, I'm on my way to Hollywood. And I got back and I got home, and 2 days later the phone rang, and one of the producers that I'd met on that movie said, Ben, you're great in the movie. We really want you to play the lead in this movie. We've had a guy, he can't play the role, he's useless. So we want you to get on a flight tomorrow evening, and we see you in Budapest tomorrow morning. And I was like, it's happening. So I go to Budapest and I'm invited. I go straight to the studios. And in fact, I went to the studios, and the two producers walked into my room and they said, who the hell is your agent? You are... you've got the wrong agent. And they said something very rude about her. And they said, look, we don't have time for you to read the script. You've got to go back to the hotel. You've got to stay in your room, because the guy who used to play your role, was playing your role, will be on the rampage. And we don't want you to talk to him. Stay in your room until Friday, because if you see him, God knows what will happen. So I stayed in my room for a couple of days. I got up the next morning. I was handed a page of script. I hadn't even read the script. And I was told to get on set, wear this costume with my jumper tucked into my trousers, which seemed weird, but the other guy had worn it that way, and they might use a few shots, and they wanted continuity. And after about 3 days, I just thought, this is stupid. I'm just sitting in my hotel room. I'm going to go down for breakfast. So I went down to breakfast, and the guy who was playing the role ran over and said, I hear you're playing my role. Fantastic. I'm out of here. And I thought, that's why they don't want me to meet him, because he might put me off working on this production. Well, this is a very long story, but basically the producer was a very disreputable guy. He'd written the script. He'd written himself in the lead role as a comedian. They had to reshoot his scene it was just an appalling mess. After a week shoot, he invited me into his office. He said that the rushes, the shots of me were awful, and he can understand that I did not have any chance to read the script or settle into the role. So he wanted to give me 3 days off to read the script. And I went, thank you, because I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm just reading these lines and saying them. And he said, okay, so we're going to give you 3 days off. We want you to go on an aeroplane back to England, pick up a package for us and come back. But you can read the script on the plane. And I said, well, great, fine. You know, I don't mind getting on an aeroplane, but what's in the package? You don't need to know that. It's going to have the production company logo all over it. Don't worry about it. And I said, look, they're going to ask me at the airport if you've been given any package to bring with you, hand luggage, by someone else. Do you want me to lie? And they said, yes. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I won't bring it and I won't get on the aeroplane unless you tell me what's in the package. And he said, well, basically 3 ounces of cocaine. I mean, I've got the whole crew on cheap because I said there'd be lots of coke around and no one's brought it into the country. So, Ben, you'll be a hero. So I said, no, it's 14 years in prison and I'm here to play the lead in your movie, not to be your drugs mule. So the end of that film, I was a bit disillusioned with these B movies. It was the only way in those days you could get yourself a show reel. And I came back and I got back into theatre and I played with Ralph Fiennes in Romeo and Juliet. And Ralph was quite a difficult character to act with. He was very method in the unhealthy method sense. In other words, we had a sword fight on stage every night and he would ignore the choreography. So he really tried to fight me.
Oh.
So I'm pretty good at sword fighting, so I could defend myself. And in the end, I had to die. And so I would, when I had enough, I would get myself up stage and die, and then I would lie on stage for 45 minutes because it was kind of in the round, theatre in the round. So I had 7 agents. Each agent would put me up for roles, and if I didn't get a leading role, if I didn't, you'd get a sort of honeymoon period where you were new on an agent's book, and then they wouldn't do anything for you. And I would ring them up. I had to survive. I had to pay my rent. I had no money. So I'd ring up my agents and say, look, I haven't had an audition in months. Is there anything? And they'd say, oh, it's really slow at the moment. So I would swap agents every year. I would get a new agent, and therefore I'd get a new honeymoon period. I got a role in the West End. I played for 6 months with a director who was a little Polish lady who'd been found in the rubble in Poland by the theatre company and taken on and played young roles. She was a piece of work. We rehearsed for 3 weeks, in which every rehearsal, at the end of every rehearsal, she would get me to ring my mother because her son never rings her. She made a really bad mistake when we moved into the West End. The show was 2.5 hours long, and she didn't know that every West End show has to be under an hour and a half so that people can get home on the tube. And she didn't realize this until the opening press night. So during the opening press night, this was the most important night of the year, of my career. It's the opening night in the West End to all the press. I was playing a lead. Most of the second half of the play was me. And so she couldn't cut the lighting cues. And she had to cut lines instead of cues, lighting cues and scenes. She couldn't cut scene because the lighting cues had been done. And she did actually move the interval to later on. and basically she cut most of my lines. So I went on for the press night in the West End with every scene. I can say that line, no, I can't say that line, I've got to cut that speech. So, of course, I wasn't particularly flowing with any charisma because I had to self-direct myself, and we had no rehearsals. We were just told, just cut that speech, cut this speech. And at the end of the night, my parents and my agent were standing around me backstage. And obviously they thought it was a bit sticky. And the director walked into the middle of the circle of my family and agent. And I said, well, did we get away with it? And she said, no, darling, we didn't. You were terrible tonight. I want you to come in at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning for rehearsals. Very important. So my opening night in the West End was pretty bad, and I didn't sleep that night. I felt like I'd really ruined my career. And I got in the next morning at 9 a.m. sharp, and I'm sitting in my dressing room until 2:30 in the afternoon, waiting for the director for these really important rehearsals. And I get a telephone call at 2:30, and she's on the line going, oh, hello, darling, you must be very angry. And I said, yeah, not only do you cut most of my part the night before opening night, not only do you humiliate me in front of my family and my agent, but then you don't even turn up for rehearsals until, you're not even here now. She said, yes, darling, I know you must feel very angry with me, and I want you to take this anger you feel for me on the stage tonight, because I just didn't feel you were angry enough. So you can imagine how angry I am at this point. So I go on that night, I am spitting blood. I am like Beelzebub. I am the devil incarnate. And I'm playing this priest, so I'm like raging, right? At the end of the show, she comes up to me and I said, well, was that angry enough for you? And she said, oh, darling, it was way, way too angry. I was only talking about 5%. Oh. So this you can understand for a sensitive, vulnerable artist that needs guidance from a director. I just felt like I was being used for the ego of gods, these directors. And I very nearly gave up after that. I went out, I did more Shakespeare. I joined a company which performed Shakespeare in the old way, where you have a scroll and you learn your lines, which was horrendous for me because I don't have a great memory. I have to really drum lines into me. And I then got a $25 million movie playing a kind of Max Headroom character in an Italian blockbuster, a virtual reality movie. And I was good at moving, and I did the audition in a black leather coat because I'd read the script and it looked like this character, this basically was the visual of a supercomputer where you could digitize your being and live forever in this computer environment, virtual reality. Well, this was, 92. Nobody had a computer. No one knew what virtual reality was. And I turned up and I spent 3 months in Rome. And this was my great break. I thought I was on my way to Hollywood again because it was a $25 million movie, and in '92 that was like a $250 million movie. This was Carol Baker, Christopher Lee, little Toto Cascio from Cinema Paradiso. This was a great film. Well, I was on set every single morning for 4 hours of makeup from 6 a.m. I had plastic hair, I had silver makeup, and they were shooting me against a chroma key background. That's blue screen. Now, if you have silver shiny makeup against blue screen, the blue screen reflects in the makeup and you can't key it. I knew this, but the director didn't seem to know it. And when I said to him, you sure this silver's going to work with chroma key? He said, Ben, you shut up and you just do what you're told. So I did. And I was on set every day for 3 months for 56 scenes in the movie. And I never said a word on set. They would make me up and then let me go. And I said to the director one day, why is it I'm coming in every day? It seems to be a really waste of makeup and all that. And he said, oh, well, if we have a problem with the weather or a problem, we will bring a camera and film you. Because you appear on a TV set, on a big screen on the set, so we can save time by filming you. And I said, why don't you just film me for 3 days and get my scenes in the can, and then you can play me live on set, and then the kids in the film can interact with me. He said, Ben, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, now I'm a movie maker. I understand what I was talking about. I was right. So you can understand these kind of negative experiences for me, even though I was a really talented actor and I knew what I was doing and I had great training, made me feel like actors were just easy tuppence. I loved acting. You know, I was at the York Theatre Royal. I did 2 Planks and a Passion. I did these plays where I was the lead in the play, and every night there'd be 1,000 people in the audience, and I loved it. It was like a huge person, a giant, every night with a different personality, and I could sense what the crowd was like, whether it was a wet night out or a hot, sweaty night out, whatever, and I could really pull the audience in and tell them a story, and I loved that. And physically, I was really good. For theatre, that's really important. Your performance has to travel 100 yards, very sensitive moment. And on film, I loved film. And in the end, we went to Italy. My mates rang me up and said, look, you've just done a commercial. Will you put some of that money into a spaghetti western? And I went to Italy, and I drove the camera van up a dry riverbed every morning at 4 a.m. with the headlights on to drive the camera equipment up there. I assisted the cameraman, and that's where I fell in love with filming as a camera. And we basically shot the spaghetti western. Because we shot it in Italy, we called it a pastern. And I loved it. And I was a Native American. I designed my own costume, and we really went for it. And the film was great. But in those days, you know, you had to do these sort of low budget films to get this show reel together, to get something together. So look, I don't want to go too much into my story. I really want to talk about what it's like for actors these days and some advice on how to get ahead. Because these days, unlike my experience in my acting, it was the 80s and 90s, and there was a lot of Weinsteins around. A lot of producers, directors, heads of department that saw actors as people they could manipulate, especially girls. And I often had a leading role where the leading girl was probably about 23 years old, and people would try to get them into bed because they thought actresses, you know, would do that to get ahead. And I've got quite a lot of horror stories about actresses that, you know, were intimidated that way. And I myself was intimidated that way by the middle-aged women who had power in the film industry. You know, they want you to manipulate you. And my final story of my career was that my twin brother was a casting director. And he didn't have his union ticket, and he was stealing because he was really good at what he did. He was getting all the commercials work, and movie casting directors do commercials in between movies to earn a living. and they were quite jealous of him doing well. And one morning, he got 4 phone calls from top casting directors saying, "We don't want you to get your union ticket." And he would say, "Well, I'm sorry, I've done my 2 years in the profession. I proved I can do it." And they said, "Yes, we know you're bloody good at it, but you're nicking our work. So we're going to put it this way. If you apply for your union ticket, your twin brother will never work again." Now, some would call that blackmail. I call it blackmail.
Me too.
And so he rang me up 4 times that morning saying, "What shall I do?" And I said, "Well, do you think they're going to give me roles, leading roles in movies, if you don't apply for your card? And I don't think we should kowtow to blackmail, do you? And I think you should do what you need to do." So I kind of knew my career was over. I'd had 20 years in theatre, TV, and film, and I was good at what I did. And so these days, it's a lot different. For actors, it's cleaned up a lot. There aren't so many drugs on set. There aren't so many seductions. There is a lot of projection onto young actors and actresses. But you have the most amazing opportunity as an actor these days, and that is short films. Now, there's a paradox here. So as a young actor, you can get into a lot of short films. The problem is that most inexperienced first-time directors will do a short film. They'll cast you in a role. They'll probably give you 1 or 2 takes to get it right because they're disorganized. And they may put an unedited or a badly edited version of their film on the internet. And then with casting directors, you do self-tapes these days, a bit like I did when I was young. You know, you get a video camera or your phone and you do your audition and you read your lines and you send it in. You don't have to get on a train and go into this casting suite and stand there and, you know, side face, front face, you know, all this sort of strange kind of modeling type thing. But the problem is that you can do a short film and then it can end up making you look bad. And then a casting director will go to YouTube and look up, put your name in, and they may see a film that doesn't make you look good. So my advice is do short films as an actor, but make sure they're good ones. And how do you do that? You know, a friend of mine who's very in touch with Netflix told me that he'd had lunch with the person who commissions scripts for Netflix, and he'd written this brilliant script. And she said, who do you want to direct it? And he said, well, I quite like to direct it, but obviously I don't have enough experience. And she said, well, 85% of the movies on Netflix are directed by first-time directors, because there is no proof out there that they're not a genius. Whereas if you've been a director and you've done 7 movies and the films haven't won Oscars, then it's proven that you're not a genius. And often they want a young director to do what they're told. So whereas in my day, director was God, nowadays directors are really like another actor. They're just there to make sure that they can get a performance out of the actors. Of course, the A-list movies, you need to be an experienced director with a good track record. And often A-list actors will not do a movie because they don't trust the director. They've had too many nightmare experiences. And the other thing is that actors never, ever tell stories like I've just told. If you ask an actor, how was the movie? He'll go, oh, it was great. The director was a genius. The other actors were brilliant. Because in that profession, you don't want to tell a story that will shame anyone, because they won't want you on their movie. Because you might tell everybody the bad things that happened. So these stories, these experiences never get out. No one ever learns from them. So as an actor, you have to protect yourself. And, you know, in my experience, agents aren't that good at protecting you. I mean, 3 months I was in Rome waiting to go on set for this brilliant big movie I was in. And I would ring my agent and he'd say, look, what are you complaining about? You're living in Rome on £200 a week per diems, you know, expenses. You know, just enjoy it. Go out and be a tourist. Act. When you're with them, be charming, be nice, you know, and, you know, if you have a 3-month holiday in Rome, who cares? So these days, as an actor, in TV and film, you get absolutely no rehearsals whatsoever. So if you're going to be an actor in TV or film, you have to be pretty good at learning lines and walking on set and just doing a performance. And that's why I think just acting yourself is so much easier than actually creating a character. Until you're a star who will take the risk. I mean, Gary Oldman plays very different characters now, you know, and they'll get an English actor to play an American if he's an A-list. But if you're not well known, you have to be the character. So if they want a midget Russian who plays the violin and can ride a horse bareback, they'll find an actor who is that. They won't want an actor to act that. If you're great at accents, fine, and that's good for theatre. But on TV and film, you need to be the real thing. And I was middle class, nice guy, normal guy, and there weren't that many roles. So that's why I played Mohican punks. That's why I played skinheads. I played yobs, and I played, you know, I played all the roles that they couldn't find an actor for. And when they invited me in, I would say, I'd like to audition for this role, and I would turn up as the character. And they'd believe me. I mean, I remember once my girlfriend's ex-husband was the DOP on a commercial, and I turned up, you know, talking like a Lancashire accent like my grandfather. And he pulled me aside and he said, I didn't know you were from Yorkshire, Ben. And I went, I'm not, but I have to play this all day because they might get worried that I'm not really from Yorkshire. So this kind of, you need to do it. And if you get that one role which defines you, that is in a film that does well, then you're made. And you then, if you get that in your 20s, then you get the leading roles into your 30s and 40s and 50s. But if you only play small roles in your 20s and you never get that one defining leading role, you will never play leading roles unless you win the lottery. So these days, a lot of actors, and I wrote a TV series that I wrote myself in as a leading role, and we were very close to getting it commissioned by Sony. But we were inexperienced and naive, and we were told to get an option agreement on it, and it took the lawyers and solicitors a year and a half to get our option agreement signed. And we didn't have the experience to make sure. And so by the time it was commissioned, you know, those people had changed their jobs. So I've had some great experiences as an actor. I loved it. Playing a leading role when you're in a film and you get to know all the crew, and every scene is just, what do you want me to do? Okay, I'll do that. And you feel so comfortable around these people. But when you get 3 lines in a TV series where you just turn up and everyone knows each other really well, and you wait all day long in your makeup and costume for that one chance to get on set, and at the end of the day when the sun's going down, you get on set and they put up, you know, it's on the set and they say, look, we've only got a chance for one take, Ben. Sorry about this, but you know, we're behind. And you just got to say that line. It's very easy to be tense. You can't just throw it away like that. So that's why it's a very tricky profession. You know, I gave up acting because I was fed up with walking in a room and trying to work out what kind of person people wanted me to be. I didn't know myself well enough. I didn't have enough gravitas to just be the kind of guy I want to be, and bugger anyone else what they think of me. You know, Gary Oldman, when I did a TV show, he used to lose his temper and throw things at people. And, you know, it kept him in his center. He became the bad boy, you know, and you either loved him or you hated him. And, you know, I was playing a Mohican punk. I was thrown out of London weekend television canteen because the lady serving the meals in the canteen thought I was a real punk. You get out of here. We don't want punks in here, you know. And I said, look, I'm an actor. I've been made up. And she still threw me out. I wasn't allowed to eat in the canteen because she hated punks. And at the end of the day, when my hair was down and I was dressed normally, I went into the canteen and I said, it's me. And she said, it was who? I said, I'm the punk that was here at lunchtime. She said, get out of here. So actors are projected against. They are sometimes the lowest of the low. But if you get that one chance that you become a star, then you have an amazing life. But here's a warning. I went out one night with Mickey O'Rourke. Do you know who Mickey O'Rourke is? Okay, so he was a big actor in the 90s and 80s. He was the wrestler in the big movie The Wrestler. He was in Rumblefish, which made his name. And I went out with him, and he was a big star at that point. And he would pretend to be drunk on the streets of London. And then we would get to a club or a bar, and he would sober up, and he'd go, all right, and he'd have half a lager and lime. And then we would go out into the entrance, and his bodyguards would turn up, and he would pretend to be drunk and disorderly for the paparazzis, because that was his reputation. And years later, I met up with him, and his career was on the downward spiral because no one would work with him because of that reputation. So it had made him a star, but he could not sit at a table in public for more than about 15 seconds before someone came up and went, oh my God, it's Mickey O'Rourke. Oh my God, I love you. I think you're great. Can I be your best friend in about a minute? And he would sort of say, nice to meet you, and get up and walk away, sit down someone else, and someone else would sit down. You know, when I was in a movie and I was semi-famous and people were recognizing me, I would walk into the supermarket and some old lady would come up and go, oh, you're that guy on TV. I hate you. You're really nasty. I don't like you. Oi, Mildred, come over here. Look at him. That's that guy on TV. Oh, we don't like you. And so I was projected against as the person I was playing, not as the human being who was an actor. And a lot of people get that. A lot of people have that problem. Once you're famous and all you wanted to be was famous, you have to remain as the character you're famous for. And you have to spend your whole life telling everybody how wonderful your life is. And it's extremely lonely. You know, in Rome, I spent 3 months in that hotel room, just sitting there waiting for the call. I wasn't allowed out in the streets in case I got in trouble or in case they needed me. And at 2:30 in the afternoon, they would ring me up and say, you're not being used today. And then I would go to the gym, and then I would go and have something to eat. And, you know, I'd come back to the hotel room and the same thing would happen. That's 3 months of my life. And I wasn't allowed to talk about that. For me, I was a movie star. I was in this great role. So there is there's a downside to being famous. You know, you should see, you know, I think it's a bit weird to always be recognized wherever you go, and people ask the same questions. What are you doing now? How do you learn lines? What's it like to be famous? And of course, you can never say, actually, it's a bit of a pain in the ass, because people keep coming up to me asking me the same 3 questions every day. You have to say, oh, it's wonderful. I love it. And I'm really grateful for this life. It's quite insecure as an actor, because one day, I was earning £25,000 in the 90s for this movie. And then I would get home and I would go to the Dole office and sign on. I was driven in a limousine with Christopher Lee singing opera songs next to me. And the next week I was begging down the Dole to sign on again. So it's a very strange life of completely different experiences every day. I think it's hard. I think I respect anyone. I think acting is an extremely vulnerable position to be in. You have to be vulnerable and tough. You have to have a photographic memory, which I didn't. So I had to teach my mouth the lines until I ran over and over and over it. I had 685 lines in a play. I had 2 weeks to learn 685 lines. That's a lot. So I'm walking around my apartment all day long, just speaking the lines, getting them into my head. But when it's great, it's fantastic. And so now I'm teaching actors how to protect themselves, how to do the work so that when they're upset with the director for treating them badly, or they don't feel supported, how to support themselves, how to direct themselves, how to take what a director says to you, and if it doesn't work out what you need to do. The best advice ever given to me was, if a director does a line reading for you, which means he demonstrates how it should be said, ignore it. Go away, find out how you want to play it, go back, and then he'll say, see, you've done it right. So, the best directors, my elder brother, Nigel Cole, did Made in Dagenham, Lot Like Love, Calendar Girls. He's an actor's director. He loves actors. He understands how difficult it is. Every single actor has a different way of working. Some actors will be great for an hour and a half, and then the rest of the day they're useless. Some actors need 10 takes. Some actors are great on the first take on a movie. So you have to find a director who's interested in the art of acting. Or you're going to get a stage manager that tells you, I know nothing about acting, just go on, say the lines, this is what your character's about, and it's up to you. And that can feel very insecure in a big movie when you're doing an emotional scene in the morning and then the first scene where you appear in the afternoon. So you have to work out your character arc, and you have to look after how you're going to be, because you do, one bad scene and you can be replaced. You can, you just let yourself down, and it's very difficult to watch yourself on that big screen. It's very difficult for your family members to watch you and think you're marvelous, because they know you as someone different, so they can see that you are acting. And if you get good at playing yourself, if you are a public school boy, like Colin Firth went to the same public school that he got his first role, it's all about his public school. If you are a Mohican punk, if you are what you say you are, and you're interesting, then you have a lot better. You've got to wait for years for that one role to come along that establishes you as a great actor. And of course, theatre is no longer really alive anymore. There's not really the theatre shows. There are the West End, and there's a very select amount of actors that do that. Musicals, yeah, you can become a musical theatre actor, but if you are, you won't do anything else. You won't get a serious role on TV, unless, of course, you become an A-list person. I don't know what else to say, really. I have so much to say. Did you want to ask me a question, or are we over? Are we done?
Well, we're a lot over, but
Okay.
we're nearly half an hour over. But I was not interrupting you at all. Definitely not. And not when you're telling me these sort of stories. No, I think what you've said is really honest, and it's what people need to hear.
Yeah.
It shows that when people are young, they're like really young, like when you're like 6 years old, you're like, I want to be an actor, because you think, God, look at that, it's perfect. But I think it's good to hear that, no, things aren't always perfect. Things can be perfect, but they're not always perfect. I think you've really shown that. And it shows that you don't have to always stay in acting. You can be a cinematographer, director, producer. You can open up your doors. You can start there. Or you can start as a director and move to an actor. It shows that it's all very connected. And I think it's amazing that what you've said, and the hard truths are good. They maybe even cringe a little bit, I'm going to be honest. I was sitting here like, whoa, no, that doesn't happen.
But look, also, I have to say, this is my experience of the acting profession, and I have to take some responsibilities for being innocent and naive to those problems. I believed that somewhere, somehow, I would be treated as an artist and that art would be respected. I think it is a lot more now. However, there are still those people out there that think an actor is, you know, in the olden times, in Victorian ages, the theatre had prostitutes in the audience walking around. Actors were seen as prostituting themselves. And so one needs to know how to protect yourself, how to, it's like things like, sometimes in a short film, you might get offered 500 quid to be in the short film, or even £100. When do you ask to be paid? Because if you get paid after you've signed the contract and after you've done your filming, you may never get paid. So it's things like asking for 50% upfront, and then 50% on the last day of filming. And don't do the last scene until you've got that money in your hand, because money runs out on short films. And even big movies, money runs out. And if you don't have an agent representing you, or if you have a collective agency, it could take them 1.5 years to get that money. And sometimes you've got to pay your rent. It's like doing other jobs, so that you get some life experience. Because after about 5 years of acting, all you know is being an actor. And if I train as a doctor, I might get a role as a doctor in a TV series. If I train as a lumberjack, I might get a lumberjack role, because they'll be looking for someone with that experience. Somebody who's been in the army or been somewhere like that. So to get a variety of jobs, to go out there and experience what real people go through, what you go through living a real life, will teach you something about who you are. And then when you become a star, you're not defined by the role that made you a star. You know who you are, and therefore fame will not corrupt you. And everyone I've ever met that made it as a movie star or a theatre star later on in life, they are grounded people, and they know themselves really well, and they don't seem to be affected by the kind of stories that I went through. But, you know, I could have been a big star, but actually now I've traveled around the world. When an actor comes in front of my camera, I know what they're like, I know what they're going through, and I can help them. You know, the best directors I ever met on a movie set were the cameramen, because they were quiet and they had the time to give me some attention. They could tell me, this is a close-up, Ben, keep it small, just think and feel, don't demonstrate anything. Or this is a big wide shot, if you just stand there, very wooden, nothing's going to come across. This is like being on stage. Now, directors didn't tell me that because they didn't know the difference between a close-up and a wide. But the cinematographer did. And if anyone ever works with me as a cinematographer, as an actor, or as a director, I will know what you're going through, and I will know some techniques on how to relax you and how to get you distracted from 40 people all looking at you and dabbing your face with makeup and asking you, you know, strange questions. Because, you know, we're looking at the set. We're transposed into a liminal world, a timeless world, and we believe everything. But as an actor these days, if you're in an action movie, you're on a green screen set, and all you're looking at is a camera and loads of people walking around. So you have to have a great imagination, and that has to be respected, and you need to feel safe. And if something happens that upsets you, you need to know how to deal with that so that you don't shut down all your feelings and get tense, because acting is about relaxation. If you're not relaxed, and you think a thought, that thought will not come across at all. It'll just be wooden. And you know, Richard E. Grant, who was in Withnell and I, who's the least wooden actor on film ever, when he was in theatre, his performance came out and dropped away. And over 3 reviews in 3 shows at the in theatre that I performed with him, every single review said that he was wooden. Because he's a movie actor. And when the camera gets up close, you can see so much going on. But on stage, it didn't travel. It just came out and dropped. So he looked a bit wooden. No one could sense what he was like. So people are naturally either a film actor, which is TV these days, or they're theatre, and they're flamboyant and big and they're good at moving, all that stuff. But, you know, I'm getting into more stuff now, and I've got lots more to say, and we should do another one some other time. But people will probably need to go and have a pee or have something to eat.
We will definitely have another one, because I feel like I can't just stop you there. Well, I'm going to have to stop you now, but I can't stop you mid-flow. We will definitely do another one, because I feel like this is all amazing. Like, it's all just so eye-opening. The more knowledge out there is the better. And
well,
people like me.
I would like to talk to directors about their relationship, about leadership. I'd like to talk to you also about how I'm training actors and what I'm doing from my experience, and how to find a character, how to find the character that you were born to play. Because that's the challenge for most actors, is to find that one character you're really good at. And of course, that is yourself. So that if you're a king, you know, it's the costume and the way other people treat you that makes you a king. So what else? So what do you play? I can't play regal, but I can get in touch with a part of me that is sovereign, that is compassionate or tyrannical or abdicatory or whatever. And I have some techniques that I'm now teaching actors, so I'd like to do one on that. And I'd like to talk to directors and say, this is what I've learned from one side, from being an actor, from being a cinematographer, and also having the experience of directing. You know, the stress that you go through as a director is incredible. It's like being in a road accident every single day. It's really difficult. And the stamina needed, if you're going to be the big director, the stamina can kill you. I've had first-time directors on movies end up in hospital after about 3 weeks of shooting, and no one ever believes that. So there are some interesting ways in which you can save energy and save time. And I'd like to talk to filmmakers like yourself about, you know, what are the best things to plan for when you do your first film? and how to cope with that stress. So until next time.
And we've got a lot to talk about, definitely. Well,
We should
next.
start a school, or a drama school or something like that. We should start a school, an online school.
We should do this because this is brilliant. This could be like take 4 of everything else, because then you are just like an absolute Bible of film and acting life. Oh, yeah, that's bloody brilliant.
Well, I've done every job around it. From a different perspective, and my mission is to bring some of this experience, strength, and hope to a world that used to be very unhealthy and is getting better, but still needs a lot of help, I think.
And you're being that help.
Okay.
Till next time.
Yeah.
That's Ben Cole. This is Fab Films, and I'm dead excited to the next date for this informational thing. So yeah. See you later, Ben.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.